Welcome to our final chapter, chapter 21 in the book of John. We are going to wrap this book up today. And before we think that this book is done, really, we're going to find that John, in the end, is giving us the pen for us to write about the things that God has done in our life or the miracles that we have seen Jesus perform in our life. So I'm excited to get to that point. But before we do, we got to look at all the other stuff in this chapter here. And so let's give a little bit of a background, because when we open up chapter 21 here, remember we have already had John pretty much close the book in chapter 20. But our first little bit here says that Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. Now, John doesn't tell us the details that we find in some of the other Gospels there about how the disciples ended up in Galilee. So let's backtrack a little bit, look at some of those other Gospels. Let's start specifically in Matthew. At the end of Matthew, chapter 28, verses 7 and 10, this again is after Jesus has been resurrected and after he's already shown himself to the disciples and kind of popped in on their dinner party there. Jesus tells them to meet him in Galilee. Mark says the same thing in Mark 16:7. Same type thing here. He says that not only to tell the disciples, but Peter specifically, and then also going to Galilee. And then in Matthew 28:16 here, I put that the 11 disciples leave for Galilee, is what it says. So again, Matthew is actually kind of giving us some more of those details. Mark says specifically Peter, let Peter know, and make your way towards Galilee. But Matthew gives us the most information, telling us that Jesus said it as well as the disciples did it. And so with that in mind, we can kind of see how the disciples have landed in Galilee here. And they are waiting for him. And that's where this chapter picks up. So John 21 again, reading in verse 1 from the New Living Translation. Later, Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. This is how it happened. So we're going to get a play-by-play here from John. He's going to give us a play-by-play as to what all took place. And, well, let's just jump in. Verse 2. Several of the disciples were there. He's going to name them by name. Here we have Simon Peter, Thomas, nicknamed the Twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples. So, again, looking at our list of people, we have we have Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, James and John, those are the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others who are not named. Now, I looked through a couple different commentaries on this to see if I could find any indication as to who these guys are, and no one has even any speculation. In fact, what I found in my research was that it's best that they be unnamed because it relates more to us. Instead of us looking at who these people are and putting them on a pedestal, as we might with some of these other disciples here, we're looking at this and saying, hey, this could be me. I could be a follower of Christ, and I could be hanging out with the disciples when this happens. So they say, 2 of them specifically that I read, say that it's best that they're not be named because it leaves it up to us. We could fit that piece. All right, let's move on then. Verse 3, Simon Peter said, I'm going fishing. We'll come too, they all said. So they went out in the boat, but they caught nothing that night. So, fishing. Now, this could be that he was passing the time. It could be that this was just their normal practice. Or many believed also that he was reverting back to his before Jesus lifestyle there. So there's a couple different reasons. Whatever the reason is, they're going to go fishing, right? So here we go fishing, and this is verse 4. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. He called out, fellows, have you caught any fish? Now I like how John writes here that they don't realize who he is, right? Now this could be for a couple different reasons. Maybe it's in the early morning. There's a little bit of mist on the waters there, so that could be kind of hiding the details of Jesus, right? In fact, I actually got a couple different reasons here. So maybe he was too far away, is what one of the commentaries said. Maybe they were not expecting him, so they didn't really kind of pay attention to who it was. They didn't recognize him. One of them said that maybe they're too disappointed and preoccupied still. They're disappointed that they haven't seen Jesus yet, and they're preoccupied with the fishing that's going on here. And then the last one here, maybe he just appeared as in John 20, when he just appeared at the dinner table there. So maybe they didn't see this guy coming along the way, they just, boom, all of a sudden this guy was here, right? So there's a couple different reasons that could possibly be there. And I was looking at some of the other translations too, and this part here where it says, "Fellows, have you caught any fish?" A more common greeting, according to some of the other translations and commentaries, would be, "Have you any food?" Just a normal, what they called a normal greeting. "Hey, fellows, have you caught any food? You got any food?" All right? So this could be, and I was trying to think about this. Why would this be something that might be said? Well, if there's like maybe just some stranger walking up and down the beach there, maybe he's hungry. Maybe if you got any extra fish, maybe I could buy it off you. Maybe you could spare me a fish so I could have something. So, do you have any food? Have you any food there? But what this really did is it caused them to admit, as skilled fishermen as we are, we haven't caught anything. If they would have at least caught something, don't you think they would have caught? They said we caught a few, but they've not caught anything all night, and it's almost as if this is admitting, I don't want to say failure, but disappointment. It's admitting the fact that we've lost our touch, right? We haven't been able to pull anything in. They didn't say a couple small fish, a minnow or something. They said we got nothing. All right, let's keep going on here. Then the disciple, I was wrong verse. Going up to verse 6. Then he said, "Throw out your net on the right side of the boat and you'll get some." So they did. And they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, for he had stripped for work, jumped into the water, and headed to shore. The others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to the shore, for they were only about 100 yards from shore. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them, fish cooking over a charcoal fire, and some bread. All right, so let's break this piece down here. That was up through verse 9. All right, so we have this guy on the shore saying, "Try the other side." All right, so you have to ask your question. You have to ask the question: would the other side of the boat really make a difference? Maybe they're scaring off the fish on this side, and so hey, let's try the other side. Maybe they've all kind of swam under the boat to the other side. Let's try this side. I don't know if that's the case or not. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fisherman. I go fishing sometimes, and normally I just catch the little ones that aren't worth anything. I've never had a huge haul of fish like they get here. In fact, like I said, I can go out there for hours and catch maybe one or two, and then that's about it. So it's not a pastime that I truly enjoy because it's not very action-packed for me. But some people are good at it. These disciples, they were good at it. This was their living. So maybe I'm just going to terrible places to fish too. I don't know. Again, I've never caught anything besides a crappie. So yeah, there you go. That's my fishing life. But anyway, does the other side of the boat really make a difference? That's the question I was asking there. I don't know if it does. I don't know. Maybe they were scaring the fish away. But here's what we find out. They did not know that it was Jesus, but they obeyed and caught too many to haul in. And this reminds me of what we studied when we were in John chapter 15, where it says, apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, I don't know if this is the intention of what John is saying here, but it gives me that same thought. Jesus has told them that apart from me, spiritually, you can do nothing. And here they are, they're on their own, they're fishing, they have caught nothing. But as soon as Jesus comes, and again, we can look at this both ways, spiritually, as soon as Jesus comes and puts his finger in what we're doing, and because we are abiding in him, things happen. As soon as they allowed Jesus, even though they didn't know it was him, as soon as they allowed this voice to change the way they were doing things, Jesus became part of it, and they get a haul. Right? And Peter's going to tell us it's 153 fish. So, or John's going to tell us this. So, for me, it seems like it just makes sense. And it seems as though, to me, that with that making sense, it is important for us to bring Jesus into every piece of what we're doing. Again, is that not what John 15 is saying? That apart from me, you can do nothing. Abide in me. We have got to bring Jesus into every piece of our life, whether it's something recreational like fishing or something spiritual like ministering in church, our normal jobs. Again, me as a teacher, I have got to bring Jesus into my workplace. Even if I publicly can't because it's a public school system, I can still bring Jesus in. And I do. I'm going to be honest. I speak Jesus in my classroom way more than I should, but I'm not ashamed of being a Christian, and I'm going to bring Jesus in, and that, I think, honestly, is the blessing. I believe that I am blessed at work as a result of the fact that I am not afraid to shrink back, and I'm bringing Jesus into what I'm doing. But are we bringing him into our everyday life? That's a question. That's a challenge. All right, moving on here. Let's see. So John realizes, hey, that's Jesus. He tells Peter, and John was the first to recognize, but Peter was first in devotion, is a comment that I found in one of the commentaries I was looking at. So Peter jumps into the water to get to Jesus quicker than the boat. And the boat obviously is hauling some fish, so it's going to take a minute for them to get there. And it says also that Peter put his clothes back on, and so let's not get the opinion that Peter was fishing naked. No, it's just like when you're going to the gym, right? You might have a different set of clothing, more relaxed clothing to wear to the gym as opposed to what you would wear to work and all, unless you're a gym teacher. I don't know, But we find that he was fishing in more comfortable clothes. They would have said that at least a loincloth or something. So he's not fishing naked, but he puts his robe back on and swims to the shore to be more decently clothed when he is in front of Jesus. All right, so the others are coming too, according to verse 8. They're just coming a little bit slower because they are bringing that haul of fish there. And then notice it says here in verse 9 that Jesus serves them. He has breakfast waiting for them. He has fish and he has bread for them, and the fire is already going. And so Jesus, in his nature again, as we see in the book of Mark there, he is the servant. He is serving the people here. All right. Reading then in verse 10. Let's pick it up from verse 10. Bring some of the fish you've just caught, Jesus said. So Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net to the shore. There were 153 large fish, and yet the net hadn't torn. All right, so here's what's cool about this. Jesus already has fish and bread for them, but he's saying, hey, bring some of that new stuff in here. So we're going to have an abundance for breakfast. And Peter, this kind of shows how muscular, how strong Peter is. Or maybe, there's those stories where people, ladies are lifting cars when their kid is about to get hurt or something. It's that buildup of, it's not fear, what is it? Not anxiety. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. Adrenaline, that's what it is. That buildup of adrenaline. So maybe even that could be part of it too. But I think Peter was a pretty strong guy, honestly. But he's lifting what they estimate 153 fish at an average size, and the wet net, I read an estimation of about 300 pounds that Peter went and dragged by himself up to the shore there. So I don't know the exact weight of everything there, but I do believe that Peter probably had a little bit of strength to him there. And he drags this up, and so they have the 153 fish extra. Did they cook them all that night? Probably not. I mean, let's be honest. That's a lot of fish, right? For that many guys to share. You know, hey, here's your 20 fish. Here's my 20 fish. We probably didn't have all those fish cooked up, but they added some more to it to make for a hearty meal. All right. And then the net didn't break, so that was kind of cool too. In fact, I think I had something on that. Oh, yes. So when I did do some of my research, one of the commentaries again said, if you notice, John pointed out some specifics there. He pointed out the exact number of fish, as well as the fact that the net didn't break. And so that, again, kind of just proves some of those details there from somebody who would have been an eyewitness to the situation. Now, notice again that John has not named himself. In fact, when we see John here, it says, then the disciple Jesus loved in verse 7. So John was there, but he is still referencing himself in the third person. In fact, it's not to the end of this chapter that John reveals to everybody here, hey, that guy that I've been writing about, the one who loved, that's me, right? So, but right now, John hasn't revealed that yet. All right, let's then move into verse 12. Now come and have some breakfast, Jesus said. None of the disciples dared to ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. This was the third time Jesus had appeared to the disciples since he had been risen from the dead. All right. Then we're going to move into the discourse here between Peter and Jesus. But let's look first here at verse 12. None of the disciples dared ask, who are you? They knew, right? And it's very possible that they knew based on maybe they saw his scars. They had been with him. They had seen him at least 2 times before when Jesus appeared and they were eating, the first time the night of the resurrection, and then 8 days later when Thomas ended up being in the room with him. So they knew who he was. My notes here say that none dared to question Jesus. They just knew. It's almost in the same way that Mary knew that Jesus wasn't the gardener. When she was called in that special way that we talked about in the previous video, that special way, that way that communicated only between her and him, she knew it was him. And I have a feeling that the disciples knew also. In their own way, they knew. Of course, they're seeing him. They can see the scars and the wounds and all that type of stuff, but I think it was more along the facts of that gut, like, I know that it's him because the way he speaks, the way he serves, the way he is doing this, right? The way he spoke, the way a miracle just happened with the hauling in of 153 fish. There's no guesswork here. They know. All right. Charles Spurgeon talks about them in the eating in the silence piece that I want to address. So here's a comment that he wrote, possibly as to why they were eating in silence. Peter looked with tears in his eyes at the fire of coals, remembering how he stood and warmed himself when he denied his master. Thomas stood there, wondering if he should have dared to ask such proofs of a fact most clear. All of them that they could shrink into nothing in his divine presence, since they all had behaved so ill. So Spurgeon is offering a suggestion as to why is it that they did not speak. And this is a very valid point. Maybe in being with Jesus now, in this more intimate, casual atmosphere, maybe some of their questions, their past behaviors are being remembered and triggered, and there might be a slight amount of embarrassment there. Again, Peter, like, oh, I love this guy, but man, I denied him. I feel so terrible about it. And Thomas, I can't believe I asked him to show me his wounds. I said I wouldn't believe it was him unless I could see and touch for myself. And all the other disciples, and we don't have everything recorded, but what were those moments of shame? Maybe for John and James, man, I remember when we wanted to call down fire. Maybe that's where they got the nickname the Sons of Thunder, right? So each one of them, there was that kind of that moment of embarrassment. I can't believe I did this. Oh man. But notice Jesus in this whole thing is still welcoming. Come and eat. Have some more food. And then in verse 13, then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. All right, so in serving, this to me shows an intimate friendship. Jesus, again, he was there for serving, but he's offering them, come, here, have some more food, guys. Let me serve you. Kind of like what we see in the Last Supper when he's washing their feet. He was serving them. This is Jesus, in essence, forgiving them, I think. All right, let's move on then. In verse 15, after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? So we have to ask ourselves, what are the these? Okay, and again, I saw a couple different commentaries, and they all didn't fully agree on what the these is. They gave some great ideas, but none of them specifically said what is these. So some of the things that I read was these would be these as in these other disciples. Another main one that kept coming up on the different commentaries is perhaps these meant fishing and doing those type things, being a fisherman. All right, those were the two main ones, and we could really build a case for either one. Does Peter love Jesus more than fishing? Right, and that would speak to us today because sometimes our hobbies take more precedence and more priority over Jesus. So yeah, do we love Jesus? Do we love Jesus more than our hobbies, more than being on our phone, more than work, more than whatever you do for a hobby? For me, it would be reading or studying or sometimes watching TV. Do I love Jesus more than these things? Okay, but then we could also ask the other part there. Do I love Jesus more than other people? In Peter's case specifically, do you love me more than the disciples? And this one I think actually builds more credibility because what does Peter say when Jesus is talking about going to the cross? He says, I'm never going to, even if these other guys leave you, I will never leave you. And yet we find that Peter was the one to deny Christ. So maybe, and this is why I think, again, this is probably more of the accurate answer, because Peter, I'm asking you this because you said that you were going to, but you denied me. So do you love me more than these guys, as you had previously said? I'm asking you again, based in your own confession, do you love me more than these guys? He's not talking about them as people, but them as their level of devotion. So here's what we find. Again, I'm going to pick it up in verse 15. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, and notice again too, he's not calling him Peter. He's using his real name, Simon Peter. Do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied. You know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Now let's look again at the words for love here. If you ever want to read a really good book about love, I would say The Four Love Languages by C.S. Lewis. And he breaks down the four most used words in the Greek for love. We, in our English language, just kind of merge them all together, but that's not really what it is. In the Greek, there are four different words. Agape is one of them, which is the love of a general use love, a dedication and such. And then there is phileo, which is the friendship love, the love that two good buddies would have. And then eros, and I can never remember the last one. But eros is the one that, like, between a husband and wife, that level of love and commitment and intimacy. And there is one more. I forget it off the top of my head. I can never remember it, honestly. But anyway, so Jesus is asking Peter, do you agape me more than these? And when we look at agape is, do you take pleasure in me more than these? And again, that's why I kind of lean towards the fact that it's not, do you enjoy fishing more than these guys do, but it's, do you love me more than these guys do? Again, based on that comment that you had made. And Peter's response is, you know that I love you, but that word is different. You know that I phileo you. So Jesus is saying, do you take pleasure in me more than these? And his response is, you know we're best friends. You know I love you like my best friend. Jesus asks again then, as we're going to see. And he asks the same way. Do you love me, take pleasure in me more than these? And Peter's response again is, you know I phileo you. All right. Before we continue on, though, let's look at this. And again, what's interesting about Jesus calling him Simon Peter, or Simon, son of John, he wasn't referencing him as the rock anymore. Peter translates into Kephas, which is rock. And he said at one point in the other Gospels there, upon this rock I will build my kingdom. Peter wasn't being very rock-like when he denied Christ. And so now he's addressing him as Simon, not as Peter. Okay? All right. And just to back up a little bit too, so it said, in my notes here say that Jesus is working to restore Peter in the presence of the other disciples. Notice this conversation is not, hey, Peter, come here, let's go off to the side and have a conversation. Jesus is addressing him right here in front of the other disciples as they are finishing or have just finished their breakfast there. And he's asking Peter specifically, do you love me? You know I love you. All right, so let's continue on. In verse 16, Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you agape me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know that I phileo you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. Verse 17, a third time he asked Simon, son of John, do you love me? But this time when Jesus is asking the question, he doesn't use the word agape here. He uses the word phileo. It's almost as if Jesus is coming to the level of where Peter is at in that moment right now. He is asking, do you love me more than these? You know I phileo you. No. Do you take pleasure in me more than these? You know I phileo you. Peter, do you phileo me? And Peter's response, it says, Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I phileo you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. Now I've heard this preached that Jesus asked 3 times because Peter denied 3 times. I don't know if I actually get the sense of that if I read it in this aspect here, and if I read it with the fact of the understanding that Jesus is asking Peter his level of love. Okay? I don't know. I guess it would be it could make sense what I've heard before. I just don't know. That's me personally. You might have a different opinion, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not here to bash your opinion. But so let's look at a couple other things here. So we read up through verse 17. So again, Jesus is asking now, do you phileo me? Peter is grieved. Jesus came to a different level of love to meet Peter. And Peter could not say of a love beyond this. At this current moment, for whatever reason, if he's feeling the guilt and the shame and all that type of stuff, or if he has been hurt either by something that Jesus did or something that he did, there is this level of grieving, and Peter is saying, I can only love you to this point right now. And he says, you know that I do. You know, you are aware of how I love you. And Jesus doesn't say, all right, well, you know what? Then forget it. He says the same response. Then feed my sheep. All right. And then here's a prophecy that Jesus is giving to Peter as we go into verse 18. I tell you the truth. When you were young, you were able to do as you liked. You dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go. Jesus said this to let him know by what kind of death he would glorify God. Then Jesus told him, follow me. Man, there's some good information in here. And what I see in this is that while Peter might not right now have the ability to love more than a friend, something is going to happen to Peter to where he is going to be willing to die as a result of his relationship with Christ. That love will change. That's what I'm hearing in that. And remember, Peter has already admitted, I will die with you. And Jesus has said, yeah, it's true, it's going to happen at some point, but not right now. You cannot take my place. I have to do this. This is the destiny that has been prescribed to me. This is the reason I came into the earth and all. And so, but now we're getting that sense again. Again, there's going to be a shifting. Peter is going to move from this best friend love to I am willing to die as a result of my relationship with Christ. So Jesus is saying with certainty, I tell you, this is what's going to happen. When you were young, you were carefree. You did what you wanted to do. You went where you wanted to go. But there's a day coming in the future. Now, there's another historian, Jerome, and he writes here, he says, he was crowned with let me try that again. He was crowned with martyrdom under Nero, being crucified with his head downwards and his feet upwards, because he alleged himself with he aligned himself to be unworthy of being crucified in the same manner as his Lord. History shows, you can read this in the Fox Book of Martyrs as well, history shows that Peter was crucified upside down. And we see Jesus talking about there is a day coming, Peter, when you are going to be taken where you don't want to go. What does it say again? You will stretch out your hands, but when you're old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go. The outstretching of the hands, isn't that what Jesus did on the cross? It's almost an indication, you can kind of see it right there, that Peter is also going to be crucified. But because of his love for the Lord and because of the statement that Jesus made in his crucifixion, he will not be crucified the same way. He is going to be crucified upside down, with his head down and his feet feet up, from what Jerome said. And again, this is also seen in the Fox Book of Martyrs. But Jesus ends this little piece, and it says, "Then Jesus told him, 'Follow me.'" And this again in the Greek is the word akalatheo. And we talked a little bit about this in John 10. In John 10:27, Jesus says that in order for you to be one of my sheep, here's what I'm looking for. It says that you have my sheep listen. I know them, and they follow me. It's that word akalatheo. So Jesus was calling Peter back to the fold. This is what I love about this whole passage right here. And this is where I do see the alignment of Jesus asking him 3 times to restore him from that. But Jesus is saying, look, Peter, you probably don't see yourself as one of my sheep right now. Not in the same sense as before the crucifixion, but guess what? I'm calling you back in. Follow me. Come back to the fold and follow me. So I put in my notes here, Jesus was calling Peter back while asking him also to be a shepherd of his sheep. He's asking, he said 3 times, "Feed my sheep." So what's interesting is that, to me at least, Jesus is saying, come on back. And once you step back into the fold, be the shepherd that I know you are, that I've called you to be, and bring other sheep into the fold. Feed those sheep that are outside. You come in first and bring others into the fold with you. And is that not what Jesus has been asking of us since we've been alive? Come and know me. And in your knowing of me, bring others in as well. We are missionaries. Whether we go to another place or not, we are missionaries. We got the Great Commission. As we see in Matthew 28, we were given the Great Commission to go into all the world and to preach and to minister and to bring people into the fold. If we truly are his sheep, first we've got to be in the fold. We got to be listening and have this relationship with him. But we also need to be those who don't just sit there and hold on to it for ourselves and say, oh, I'm saved. I'm so saved. What about all those others who aren't? Our mission field, no matter where you go, and you don't have to go overseas to do this, our mission field is to bring others into the fold. As we've been going through this study, this has been what I'm trying to do. I am trying to bring you into the fold. Maybe you're there on the fence. Maybe, I used to know Jesus, but I've kind of stepped away. Come back into the fold. And once you come in and you realize and you remember who Jesus is, then your mission is to go out and bring others into the fold as well. I tell you, that while this was words spoken to Peter, this is a message that is for all of us. In some way, we have denied or unprioritized Jesus. Our level of love has probably dwindled. But Jesus is saying, it's not too late. I'm not done yet. Come back to the fold and bring others in as well. So in my notes I put here in capital letters, despite our past, there is redemption. Peter denied, Jesus restored. Peter's past did not define him, and ours does not define us. It is a matter of asking for forgiveness and coming back to the fold. Follow and keep following going forward. And actually that word in the Greek is an imperative. Did I write it down? I don't think I did. But in the Greek, it means keep following. So follow me, our petty English, is actually him saying, keep following me. Keep following me. It's not just a one-time thing. Keep following me. And in order for us to keep following him, what must we do? we must have our sights on the shepherd so that we can see where he is going and we can follow where he is going. I don't know about you. That kind of gets me a little pumped up. All right. All right. Now, going into verse 20 then. Peter turned around and saw behind them the disciple Jesus loved, John, the one who had leaned over to Jesus during supper and asked, Lord, who will betray you? All right. So he's talking about this guy. All right. John's giving us the indication of all these things so we know that it's this same guy. And Peter asked Jesus, what about him, Lord? So Peter is basically all this to say, and then Peter looks over at John and says, what about John? All right. Verse 22, Jesus replied, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? As for you, follow me. So the rumor spread among the community of believers that this disciple wouldn't die, but that isn't what Jesus said at all. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? All right. So, basically Jesus is saying, Peter, I'm not talking to John right now. I'm talking to you. Everything I have told you is for you specifically. Don't worry about John. I have plans for John. And if I want him to stay alive until I come back, it's none of your business, is what Jesus is basically saying. But Peter, I'm talking to you. I am laying out for you what is to come. Now, because Jesus made this comment, again, it says that rumors began to fly that, oh, John's going to live forever. And obviously, we know he didn't. All right? But that was the indication that was given based on this comment. And so John clarifies and says, that's not what Jesus said. Look, John is the guy writing this. He said, that's not what Jesus said about me. He said, what does it matter to you, Peter? He didn't say I'm going to live forever. He says, if I choose to have him stick around. All right. So John, in this story here, is also kind of clarifying what Jesus did and did not say. But overall, this conversation that Jesus was having was between him and Peter in front of the other guys. All right. I got everything on that. So let's close up with the last two verses here. Verse 24. This disciple is the one who testifies to these events and has recorded them here, and we know that his account of these things is accurate. So again, this book bears the name of John. And John has, up until this point, used that third person referencing throughout the entire book. And now he says, that guy that Peter was talking about is me. I have written to you everything I have seen firsthand. I didn't tell you stories from somebody else. I wrote down what I saw firsthand. See, when we look at the book of Mark, Mark was actually penned by Mark based on the account of Peter. Matthew was written based on the account of Matthew. Luke was not even one of the disciples, so he was writing based on what he had heard, what he investigated for himself. Again, he wasn't there to see these things firsthand, but he interviewed people who were. And John is saying, what I wrote for you, while I talked about myself in the third person, I am that guy. I am John. I am this disciple who was there in these events. It's been me. Verse 25. And I love this last bit here. It says that Jesus also did many other things. If they were all written down, I suppose the whole world could not contain the books that would be written. So John is telling us here in the end, as much as I have written, it's just a small piece of what Jesus did and said. But it also gives me the indication that John is moving the pen, giving it to me, passing like the baton, passing it to me. And I, and all the other saints between John and I, and you and everyone, we could all write what Jesus has done in our life. And guess what? the world could not contain the number of books that we all could personally write about what Jesus has done for us. And as I was thinking about this, I began thinking, what are some of those major things that Jesus has done for me? I remember my moment of decision where I decided, you know what, I want to follow after Christ. And I can tell you things that he has done, blessings that he has done, things that he has said. When I broke my leg and they wanted to put screws in it, and I believed God is going to heal me, Jesus is going to heal me, and I don't have screws in my leg. I don't have pains in my leg. I can't tell you the weather through my leg, right? Jesus healed me. And I was off crutches within 2 weeks of something that they said I should be having screws or at least on crutches longer. I literally took the crutches and threw them in the trash can and started walking without, because I knew Jesus was going to heal me. And I remember hearing the doctor, as he's doing the x-rays, he's saying, I don't know what happened, but this leg is perfectly fine now. It doesn't need these things. I could write a story about that. I could write a story about how Jesus helped me, redeemed me after my divorce when I felt life was not worth it anymore. All these different things, the car crashes that I was in, that Jesus protected me from. Even just last year in teaching, the way that Jesus protected me from some of the temperaments and swinging arms of the students and such. There is so much that that Jesus has protected me from, saved me from. I could write a book. You could write a book. What has he done for you? And John, like I said, is giving us the pen, and he's saying, look, the world would not be able to contain everything that Jesus has done. John offered just a small 21-chapter sampling of what he specifically heard Jesus say and saw him do. We all could write this book. I tell you what, I have enjoyed our study together. I hope that you have. I hope that you have gained something. I hope something has at least challenged you. I tell you what, let's just pray. I don't know what else to say. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he's going to do next in my own life. I'm excited to hear about what he's doing in your life. I really enjoy studying his word because I come out feeling different. And I would say right now, I would just challenge you with this. When you read the Bible, don't just read it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just reading it. But take the time, as we've done here, to dive in and look at the Scriptures. And allow the Holy Spirit to show you what is meant in the Scriptures and how it can relate to you. All right, let's pray. God, I want to thank you for the time that we have been able to share in your word these last 21 sessions, that we have been able to look at the details of what you inspired John to write, what the Holy Spirit inspired John to write. I thank you that we have this testimony of Jesus Christ. And I pray that it would not just be words, but we would take the challenges, we would take the teachings, we would take the things that we have learned in this study, we would apply them to our life. I pray, God, that we would be your sheep who continue to follow you no matter what. Thank you for your sacrifice, Jesus. Thank you for pulling us out of the hell that we were in and giving us the opportunity, the blessing of eternal life with you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hey, I'm Dan. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. Hope to see you in another one of our classes soon. God bless.